So a pretty massive amount of Warhammer news and releases this week. New Marines, potentially a really cheap way to field Blade Guard, all the prices and kits coming out for this week, and much more besides. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today we're going to be doing a big Warhammer news summary. I've left it a good week or so since I've done one of these, and really quite a lot of interesting small things have built up. Those are things that maybe didn't need an entire video all to themselves, but nonetheless I thought could be interesting for 40k collectors. It's really quite a mixed bag this time, all sorts of new Space Marine releases, including a fair bit of Heresy and Legions, but could definitely have 40k applications, and some previews from over the week from Games Workshop, including limited edition books, new terrain sets, and one fun new abomination. Plus I thought I'd also throw in a bunch of channel things. I wanted to cover a couple of important rules that are missed in a previous Codex review, and giveaways and model releases on the channel this month. Loads to talk about, so let's jump right in and go at least a fairly prompt pace. I'd say one of the most interesting things for this week are these new Heresy era command squads that Games Workshop's come out with. I certainly noted these could be an interesting kit when they first got teased. Any sort of Space Marines with power swords and storm shield type affairs are just kind of cool in my opinion, and at the time I clocked that these guys could be a really interesting option for getting some budget Blade Guard, particularly if you're going down the route of a fairly cheap Heresy counts as 40k sort of model approach, which weirdly feels like one of the cheapest ways to go about collecting a Space Marine army if you're sticking entirely to Games Workshop's models. Seems that the command squads come out in two different options, either in a choice of Mark 6 Corvus armor or in Mark 3 armor, mainly determining the styling of the rest of the armor and the backpacks that they have. And then each one of these comes with the command squad upgrade frame, as you can see largely with power swords and storm shields, though there's a few fun extras like a choice of standard, as we'll take a look at in a second. I'd say the pricing on these is better than I might have hoped for current 40k releases, £31.50, $52 or €41, and they're going to be going up for pre-order on Saturday the 15th of June, full sale on the 29th of June when they appear in stores. These are all complete plastic kits as well, fortunately not one of their Forge World resin releases. As mentioned, I thought they could be particularly relevant to 40k collectors if you wanted to get a whole bunch of Blade Guard on the table on a budget. Blade Guard veterans I think are a fairly fun and exciting unit in game, not necessarily top tier, though I think they do rather well with Adrax Agaturn of the Salamanders, and certainly hold their own in more casual play beyond that, unless you're finding some kits from the bits box. To kit bash them with Assault Intercessors though, they're sort of monstrously expensive. £37 or $60 per 3 of them, so basically £12 per miniature or $20 per single model, unless you are combining the bits with some Assault Intercessors to make them go further, which you totally can do. If you did like the look and feel of these guys though, a couple of sets of these could basically get you 3 squads of 3 Blade Guard plus an Ancient altogether. You don't have to assemble a standard guy as a standard, there are enough bits for another power sword and shield loadout if you'd like, and it just works out as spectacularly better value compared with the Blade Guard veterans, just over $10 or £6 per miniature, so basically half the price of the 40k Blade Guard veterans. Obviously the Heresy era aesthetic is really quite different to the 40k one, though they are basically still Space Marines with power swords and storm shields, and you certainly could add a bit of conversion if you wanted to, maybe use a few Primaris bits or some other fancy veteran style adornments to bling them up a bit from your bits box, and I do think that they could have some good application to 40k collectors. It does look like Games Workshop will be selling the upgrade frame separately as well, like they do with their other Heresy era ones. This one will be on their web store or an online only one. Eventually some discount retailers will stock them, but probably at a lesser discount compared with their more normal offerings most of the time. I'm a little bit suspect as to whether or not this will work out being a good deal though, given that it looks like this will be $30 at the very cheapest, unless they surprise us. I feel like for the extra price difference you might just want the extra tactical marines, though I guess they do come in fairly big value box sets in themselves. My guess is though that once you've taken into account the discount that you can get easily via discount retailers on the other ones, this one might not be as worth it as much. But again, if you wanted to use for 40k purposes, this one could be a fairly direct upgrade for some Assault Intercessors to give them power swords and shields and things. In any case, this alongside some Legions Imperialis will be going up for pre-order this weekend. As ever, I've got the channel affiliate discount links down in the video description for any of you guys who were hoping to pick some up. They should have the new stuff at somewhere between 10 and 20% off depending on where you are in the world. These are the times when the pre-orders go live from Friday night to Saturday morning. Individual discounters might sell out of certain things, though I feel like you'll be able to find other ones that stock them. Certainly a bit less pressured to be on time for these versus the big Battleforce box sets though, fortunately. A big thank you to any of you folks who do choose to pick up anything that they might be getting down in those links. Otherwise, for the Space Marine releases this week, there's a bunch of other Heresy models. These will be from Games Workshop's web store as their Forge World resin ones. There are character series that have been drip fed out on those Thursday previews over the past few weeks. I believe it's Shadrach Meduson of the Iron Hands, Hebu Khan of the White Scars, and then Tybalt Mar and Little Horus Aximund of the Sons of Horus. A lot of these guys all tied with that Battle for Beta Garmon narrative that they've been pushing in the Age of Darkness and in Horus Heresy. Generally, the minis for these were really quite well received when I talked about them on the channel before. Tybalt Mar was perhaps met by a bit of a shrug by people, seeing as the miniature doesn't have quite as much unique stuff, but the rest all feel pretty flavourful for their various legions. Really nice to see some Iron Hands and White Scars representation. As their Forge World resin though, they are likely to be very expensive. As per other named character releases, it could be in the region of $58, £37 or €46. Forge World certainly priced their individual character miniatures into the stratosphere. Otherwise, for the week's releases, there's a few big Legions Imperialis box sets coming out, a huge combined offering for the Space Marines and for the Solar Auxilia. These ones look like they're priced at the same price as an Imperial Knight Titan, not so much more than a Combat Patrol for Warhammer 40k right now. They're £110, $179 or €145. They do look kind of cool as a focus way to start new epic 40k in one big set. For the Space Marines, you get a bunch of their heavy tanks, including the Kratos ones, plus a bunch of Rhinos, fast attack, dreadnoughts, and infantry. For the Solar Auxilia, you get a good portion of their range as well, things like those Dracosan transports, some super heavies, Russes, Ogrins, Sentinels, a whole bunch of support weapons, and some infantry there as well. They also have a small tank release at their normal pricing for them as well, some mini Predator tanks, or a whole bunch of mini Lehman Russes. They're the ones that have the option to be built as a Vanquisher cannon as well, and I must admit I do like the idea of zooming little fun tanks around the board, probably about the biggest thing that interests me the most for that setting. Otherwise, a whole bunch of things have been repackaged as well. These ones, some mini-scale Aeronautica Imperialis, some civilian buildings, and a great big War Master Iconoclast Battle Titan. All of these basically reboxed to pivot towards Legions Imperialis, as opposed to the Adeptus Titanicus and the Aeronautica Imperialis that they originally came out from. As with the rest, they'll be pre-ordering from Saturday the 15th of June. Otherwise, for a Games Workshop teaser article this week, they took a closer look at a Ruin Zone Mortalis terrain set for Necromunda, which I found pretty interesting. Games Workshop terrain is of course really quite pricey. You can get lots of good third-party or 3D printed alternatives out there, of course, but they do usually come out with some fun stuff. This one basically aiming to be an adaptation for the Zone Mortalis type boards for Necromunda, the ones that tend to be set up in a sort of grid system of corridors and things, having your combatants fight in a close confines maze. For this one to tie in with that whole Hive Secundus narrative, it looks like their plan is to come out with a ruined and derelict terrain set, so you can imagine that they're picking through the confines of a hive that's been completely destroyed. I guess perfect for that one out in the wasteland that's been bombed into oblivion, with the sinister Genestealers lurking beneath. That's just a teaser article at the moment though, no idea when it's going to be coming out or how much it's going to cost. Last weekend I did a full review of Codex Adeptus Auroritus and Codex Genestealer cults. Feel free to check them out if you'd like to, they will be fairly easily searchable. I must admit that was a pretty spectacularly busy weekend, more so than normal for a codex release, not one but two different codexes coming out at once, and also Games Workshop dropping the full rules for the Pariah Nexus missions. I think I managed to live up to some of the memes on the sleep deprivation front making those reviews. It was kind of striking just how different the story was between the faithful avenging angels of the Adeptus Auroritus and the twisted cultists of the Genestealer cults. Games Workshop gave the sisters loads of buffs and really quite cool and interesting detachments. The Genestealer cults generally felt like it was more nerfs than buffs. A few things got a bit better, but there were hits all over the codex, from the core rule with battle line changes to the reigning in of Brood Brothers. All of the detachments probably feeling a little bit weaker than Index Genestealer cult at best, and then pairing that all off with some datasheet nerfs. There's still definitely a whole load of interest in there, and I'll still be playing them myself, but I am hoping Games Workshop's going to hand out some generous points cuts. I did just want to cycle back to a couple of changes that I'd missed in the Codex review though. There were perhaps an unusual amount of datasheet changes for the Genestealer cult, so a couple of things slipped by me. Neophyte Hybrids took a few hits on a number of fronts. The seismic cannon profile was nerfed, as were battle line units respawning as mentioned, and then they maybe got a bit of a side grade trading out their command point farming thing for sticky objectives. One thing that I missed about their data sheet though was that they locked out the heavy and special weapons a bit further, yet another case of no models no rules for that box. Previously a 20 strong neophyte hybrid squad could take 4 seismic cannons, now per 10 models it's only 1 seismic cannon per 10, and then you have to take your other heavy weapon as one of the others, either a mining laser or heavy stubber. I guess it's not the end of the world and you still get the same amount of heavy weapons as before, but it will be a little bit less focused. I guess an optimal setup will be 2 mining lasers, 2 seismic cannons, 2 grenade launchers, and then maybe 2 webbers or perhaps flamers. Still could hand out a fairly generalised punch from reserve, but I feel like between all the nerfs they are going to have to go down in points a bit. It wasn't literally all bad news though, as I did miss what might be low-key one of the better buffs out of the codex, one that affected the Achilles Ridge Runner. That's one of their most important units right now, as you can basically shoot something and hand out the AP debuff. Pre-codex it was usually used to amp up the AP on demo charges and seismic cannons. I'd missed that there was one subtle wording change that meant that their debuff effect applies to the end of the turn, not the end of the phase anymore, so the Achilles Ridge Runner, which was already an auto-include, basically got even better, as now when you shoot a unit with any of them, not only do you get the damage that you were doing with the Ridge Runner, and the AP debuff that you get in the shooting phase, but now also anything that charges that same unit will get extra AP. Aberrants have had their base profile nerfed, but kind of fun that you can get AP3 Aberrants or AP3 Pure Strains if you shoot with a Ridge Runner and then charge with them. Still seems kind of intimidating with the Biosanctic Brood Surge, and it means that Ridge Runners look like they're more auto-include than ever unless they go up in points by some sort of crazy margin, though I still think that lots of the rest of the codex needs to go down in cost. For a little bit of channel news, Games Workshop isn't the only one releasing some model soldiers this month. A few of you might have caught the Iron Enforcers project that I've been enjoying doing, basically trying to make this into a channel army with what comes next voted by fans. The idea being that these can be some generic wargaming miniatures that you could use for all sorts of game settings, not necessarily just Warhammer 40k or anything. Plenty of applications for core model soldiers out there beyond Games Workshop. There's going to be one core unit per month as determined by you guys, and this month we've got the Iron Enforcers Patrolman, a dystopian police force armed with some laser submachine guns, batons and energy weapons. Hopefully should be at least fairly general purpose and can fill out some line infantry with a bit of a twist. These guys are available in 2 different ways, either as 3D printed STLs via the Thangs website. That works as basically like a subscription similar to Patreon, though for this month it basically adds up to $7 for 14 STLs of these miniatures if you use the code ATL30. There will be more miniatures coming each month if you do choose to remain subscribed though. The next one's for a transport vehicle called the Oppressor, which I'm really looking forward to showing off the final design. These guys are also now available as some physical print miniatures as well via Wargame Portal. That'll also be linked down in the video description as well. For the time and effort of printing them off, that's $27.50 for the 14 miniatures, which is still pretty affordable versus certain other manufacturers out there. Though of course for people looking to economise the most, it's probably the STLs and print them yourself. I'll leave the links to them down in the video description for those interested. Returning to the Games Workshop Warhammer previews again, and another thing that was highlighted this week by them was the fancy Morvenn Vahl Spear of the Faithful limited edition book. This is one that has been announced for a little while now, but given that they've showcased it again, it's probably not too far away from release. It looks like it's one of these big limited edition things where they get the author to sign all the books, number the copies, and add in all sorts of kind of fun but crazy extras. This one comes in a little box with a magnetic case with some inquisitorial ancestors iconography on it, a velvet effect cover, gold foil details, numbered and signed as mentioned, an extra book in the whole thing called the Book of Saints, which is apparently written as if it was written by an in-universe sister of battle chronicling the deeds of the sororitas saints. I think that's quite a fun idea, and some art stills from that book as well. Seems like a fun one if you're particularly into your battle sisters. I'm sure it will be priced as a premium as per Games Workshop's normal products by this. I'm sure there'll be more people out there who just want to read the book via a normal release. Kind of interesting to see if there's any fun lore details from that. Apparently this will be the first novel to detail the exploits of Mrs. Vahl herself, appointed as a High Lord of Terror and then being more of a firebrand than you'd expect, commanding the defence of Ophelia 7, the oldest and greatest of the Imperium's cardinal worlds. There's some fun stuff for Sigmar this week as well. As you can tell, I focus on 40k and it's not really a game system I delve into too much, but I have been enjoying all the cool new miniatures coming out for their 4th edition. It really can't be too long until the big box goes up for pre-order. I wouldn't be too surprised if it drops any weekend from now. It looks like they're on to the phase of showcasing releases that come out after the big box, much as they did with Warhammer 40k. And it seems that the Skaven get a brand new monstrosity called the Abhorrent Brood Terror, made out of all sorts of biological rat bits, swollen to enormous size, and then armed with some nice warpstone weaponry and a great big flail. It's probably not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I feel like the just sheer twisted weirdness of it is very Skaven indeed. A wholly uncanny fusion of rat and machine. Apparently this one even needs the sacrifice of a master molder to be basically sewn into the whole thing, so I guess it must be a bit of a nervy process if you're going to be working on them from Clan Molder. Otherwise for the Stormcast, they unveiled this Knight Azyros or Azyros, soaring aloft on the flaming wings similar to the Prosecutors, and again really quite a fun miniature I think. It's basically another remade, updated sculpt for a Stormcast miniature they released really quite a long time ago, but redone for their 4th edition. Again, a pretty spectacular model in my opinion. I think the posing and everything is quite nice. Kind of interesting that you can't see his legs under that great big cape that he's got going on there. It does make the whole model look a bit more otherworldly from the front, like a great big eagle or ghost or something. Apparently he can also be fielded as a character called Taunus the Redeemed. Apparently he's a fairly well known character from Sigmar lore, and that's to the extent where a few people were happy to see him get a miniature. I'm not going to be able to add too much intelligence to the discussion on that front though. For future 40k releases, there's a good few things that we know about already, though Games Workshop haven't really given us much of a timetable or codex release agenda so far. It looks like the next scheduled big preview show for Games Workshop might be this one from Tacoma Open in Washington on the 19th of July. That is over a month away though, so I guess it's not impossible they could do something before then, or drop in a few announcements or previewed models on their Monday announcements. Generally with all of Games Workshop's big tournament series that they do over in the USA, they normally have a reveal show attached. Hopefully that means that we might have something interesting from Tacoma, and they're also touting this as the first event using the Age of Sigmar rules, so I guess that heavily implies that it's going to be perhaps this weekend or next weekend, sometime in which they've got a chance to actually have the boxes shipped out and people use the books before this goes live. Otherwise though, besides the massive game updates that we're expecting in the coming week, it might be a little bit more quiet on the 40k releases front. For actual confirmed Warhammer 40k releases, we're basically waiting on a whole bunch of individual things that came out in big boxes. We've had the Orcs and Custodes ones, so now we're waiting on the Chaos Lords, the Benefactors and the Jump Canoness that came out in the recent Battleforce box sets, and then also 4 kill teams as well, the Mandrakes, the Night Lords, the Hernkin Jaegers and the Brood Brothers. I'm sure there's a good bunch of people who either missed out on the kill team box sets with the low supply, or didn't really want the hassle of getting an entire set when they literally just want one squad out of it. On the Codex release agenda, the Mystery Codex will be the next one. That could be Agents of the Imperium, but not necessarily. We did see the leak 4 pages of that, but it doesn't actually mean that it's the next one. And the only time frame teaser that we had was for summer, which technically could be all the way up to September if they're feeling not so generous. Hopefully we won't have too much longer to wait, at least for the reveal of that. I feel like that'll be the next major announcement for 40k releases with the identity of that. Otherwise we do have a whole bunch of release weekends kind of booked in besides the 40k stuff. The Age of Sigmar 4th edition might well take up a couple of weeks of releases. That's going to be the whole Skaven Tide box set, which to be fair, a fair few people are looking interested in. I feel like Skaven in particular are drawing lots of people to that. We know there's going to be a couple of release weekends dedicated to the Horus Heresy. Given their Mechanicum release, there's going to be a big box coming for that, and then they'll have to release the individual models in another weekend sometime after. And then we've got the Necromunda big box coming out as well, High Fleet Secondus with the Horus Spire Hunters, plus those twisted Genestealers and things. I'm certainly looking forward to the 40k gaming update though, which sounds like it's going to be a particularly big one this week. A new balanced data slate and points updates out, new 40k AdMech rules for their codex to try and make it a bit less boring, and the actual official points costs for Genestealer Cults, Sisters of Battle, and hopefully those Hernkin Jaegers thrown in as well. All those are kind of in limbo at the moment when we've seen the codex rules, but we don't know the points cost that we're going to be playing with. For the last major bit of news, I wanted to share this article that I saw on a site called wargamer.com. Certainly feel free to check them out for the whole article, but I just really quite enjoyed the fact that there's a real life squig out there. A deep sea fish from off the coast of Chile. This one apparently called a Chornocops, aka a type of sea toad. I'd imagine not quite as angry as their fungoid lookalikes, but was pretty impressed with his colouring and being all covered in spikes, plus the little feet like flippers. Credit to the Wargamer people for sharing that. Finally, for a last bit of channel news for this month, I thought I'd just quickly mention the July Battleforce Giveaway. This month's version of it is for 6 channel viewers to get either the Army of Faith or Genestealer Cult Biosantic Brood Surge, the recently released Battleforce box sets that are coming out alongside the codexes currently on pre-order. Hopefully should be a good way for a few people to get the core of a Genestealer called army, or just a massive amount of jump pack sisters descending from the sky. They look like they'll be fun in the Bringers of Flame. As per normal for the channel giveaways, there's 2 equal ways to enter, both of them links down in the video description. Either you can support the channel on Patreon for any amount. That is the main thing that keeps me covering the 40k news and rules updates all the time, and it gets you automatic entry into every prize giveaway each and every month. I do try and keep them something similarly interesting and big in scale. Otherwise, you can enter completely for free via the social media, subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the Facebook page, and then to actually enter the giveaway, a Facebook post appears on the 1st of July. That's there from midnight UK time for 24 hours, and reply to that post with any 40k mini or imagery along with your name and the date handwritten within the same photo. That last bit is just to make sure the prize goes to real people and not Facebook spammers. Then I put all the entries into a random number generator, announcing the draw on the channel update video around the 4th of July. The box sets will be posted when I receive my orders of them. Weirdly, it looks like one of the Biosantic Broodsurge box sets has turned up early for me, though I guess most of the rest are supposed to get here sometime next week to the week after. In any case, check out the Patreon page or the Facebook page, links down in the video description if you'd like to enter for those, and there'll certainly be further giveaways each and every month. As always, let me know what you make of all the Warhammer news then. Would you be tempted by the Horus Heresy Command Squad or any of the new miniatures coming out? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And what do you make of Games Workshop's new previews for Sigmar models, Terrain, and Fancy Sisters books? Look forward to hearing all your thoughts as always. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to keep up with Games Workshop's news and updates. I'll certainly be looking forward to covering the balance updates in the next week, and anything else that Games Workshop should happen to surprise us with. As mentioned, check out the links in the video description below for channel giveaways or Iron Enforcer miniatures and everything. A massive thank you to all you folks helping to support the channel on Patreon, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Hopefully we'll be talking about some Balance Pass hopes and predictions. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.